In this lesson, we will animate our fueling line separating from the aircraft. What we'll do is go back to our Layers Manager. Let's go ahead and show our fueling line. We'll also show our joint objects. So what we'll do is utilize Cinema 4D's very robust IK system to have the fueling line dynamically fall. What we need is to animate the driving action of that. So as we animate the fueling line's end falling, Cinema 4D's dynamic system will cause the rest of the joints to follow very naturally. Now we'll need to change our rig just slightly to make this work. What we'll want is for volume to be kept at the very end here where the hose connects into our gas cap. Now currently you can see that our solver is connected from our start joint to the very end. And because of that, if we try to use dynamics at this point, we wouldn't have that end connect in properly. So let's go ahead and start to adjust the rig slightly. We'll go ahead and take the current goal object and we'll just go ahead and delete it. So that's this sphere null. Let's go ahead and just remove it. And then next, what we need to do is redefine the end joint of our solver. So I'll go ahead and select the IK tag. I'll also expand the entire joint hierarchy we have. Holding down Control, we'll left click. And you can see, again, it's the very end joint, 41, but let's go ahead and make that 39 instead. I'll grab joint 39 and add that to the end field. So you can see a new connection has been made. Again, that way we can keep volume right here at the end. Now what we need is a control to have the hose separate. What we can do is actually work with joint 40. We can have this drive the rest of the hose's movements. I'm going to go ahead and take this and separate it outside of our hierarchy. And now we can scroll up to the top and go ahead and collapse this down. Since we know that this will be animated, let's go ahead and freeze it. And we'll also rename it to anim_bn. We can go ahead and leave the rest of the name. Great. So now we're ready to create a new goal object. Let's go ahead and select our IK tag. And we'll create a brand new goal. Let's rename this to goal_fueling line. And we'll use the same properties we've used to change its display. So under the Object tab, the display will be set to sphere, the radius to 60, and the orientation to X and Y. And again, since we will animate this, we can go to coordinates, we can go ahead and freeze this down. Now I'd like to point out to you that you may want to have this follow with the joint that we will animate. With that joint selected, if we were to start to move that object, notice it's only going to move that very end. So what we do is simply take our goal object and parent it underneath the joint we'll animate. We may need to refreeze the object again, but notice when we go back to the joint, now everything's moving just fine, and now we have the secondary control to keep volume in the hose as it falls. Alright, great. So I'll go ahead and undo everything back. Now we need to think about our evaluation order. This is simply what tells Cinema 4D how things should happen and at what time. So right now we just need to make sure that our joint system is going to be underneath the object we will animate the hose with. So it's simply go ahead and make sure that it is going to be underneath that hierarchy, but not tied to the actual hierarchy of the animated joint. So I've just added it so it's underneath that. So if we were to go ahead and collapse the animated joint, you can see right now the rest of the chain will follow. And then if you decided later on to tie the animated joint here to the airship, maybe perhaps with a constraint, you then want your airship's group to be above everything. All right, so I've just taken the group and I've placed it so that it is above the animated joint, and then the rest of the fueling line's chain is below the animated joint here. If you'd like to learn more about evaluation order, feel free to take a look at our character rigging tutorial. We cover that in Intro to Character Rigging as well as Cartoon Character Rigging. Alright, but let's say we go ahead and now start to animate the hose to fall to separate. We're going to have this happen just before the airship starts to take off. And we want it to be timed in a way where it looks as if the pilot has used a button to detach the fueling line. Later, Kyle will show you how to add particles to make this look very realistic. But let's say we go to frame 121, and we'll go ahead and record a keyframe on our animated joint. And now just a few frames after, on 133, just before the airship starts to take off, we'll have the fueling line fall. Great. Now we need to make sure that there's a slight arc as it falls so that it doesn't fall in a very linear path. So we'll just go a few frames. Let's say on about frame 128, we'll just go there and lift the fueling line up just a little bit more to create an arc as it falls. Excellent. So when we play this back, it detaches. Beautiful. And again, we could always work with our animation path to adjust that fall so it looks more realistic. So what I've done here was I've taken this very end key and I've just kind of dragged it back just a little bit more so that it doesn't have a straight fall, but it kind of falls at a slant. All right, beautiful. So we have animated our fueling line detaching from our airship. We've also re-rigged it slightly just so that it can work well for our needs. So now we're going to get into a fun topic in the next lesson where we learn how to dynamically animate our fueling line.